From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
Daniels Roofing, licensed, bonded, insured roofing contractor. 45 years of generational expertise, offering a variety of roofing systems in the North State. Composition shingles, metal, tile, fire-safe wood shingles, and spray foam roofing systems. An energy-saving cool roof, perfect for commercial flat roofs and mobile homes. With other companies, you may get a foreman or a salesman. But with Daniels Roofing, you get Daniel. Call today for your free estimate. Daniels Roofing, 3 generations working hard to protect your home and business.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Meteorologist Mike Krueger. You can go ahead and start off with the dense fog advisory the National Weather Service has issued until 10 o'clock this morning. We're beginning to see signs of, finally, many areas in the valley starting to see that fog begin to develop here early this morning. And as we get into the latter parts of the morning and closer to noon hour, most of this fog should burn off by then. But that's also going to have a big impact on what our temperatures end up doing here later on today as well. We also have a freezing fog advisory like we've seen the last several mornings. It's mainly for Scott Valley, Etna, Fort Jones, for example, that has that potential. And there's been that persistent fog through most of the day in the Scott Valley area. Now, we look at some of the visibilities early this morning here, and you can see, around Tehama County and Red Bluff, we are seeing very dense fog with 0-mile visibility. We're also seeing the reduced visibilities in places like Chico and even Oroville. Not so much in Redding right now, but that is most likely going to change as we get closer to sunrise here. Now, take a look at the Sundial Bridge earlier this morning on Highway 44, the exit there, and you can see we have clear skies. But again, we're most likely going to see, at the very least, some of that patchy fog developing in the area. But again, already seeing very dense fog in the Red Bluff area, and then heading southward near Chico. This is Highway 99 at Neal Road. Pretty decent visibility there as well. So I do think we're going to see that patchy fog throughout the morning hours. Be prepared for that on your morning commute. It's one of those situations where you may head out your door in the morning and then before you know it, you're in a very dense fog. So just kind of take it easy, take it nice and slow. This is a beautiful shot. I want to thank James for sending in this photo here. This is from Old Shasta, looking out at Lassen Peak. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, if you want to share your photos like James did it from the free Weather NorCal app, you can very easily do that. If you don't have the app, just search for Weather NorCal, and you can download the app for free and share your photos. All right, let's get you into your Krueger's Quickcast so you know what to expect as you head out the door this morning. And let's take a look at your forecast heading out the door. Now, there is going to be that patchy fog in the valley. Trinity County has been seeing that the last several mornings, as well as the North Coast. Siskiyou County, for the most part, will be sunny. Again, it's mainly western Siskiyou County in places like Scott Valley, Etna, Fort Jones are going to see that fog and that freezing fog as well. So what's the reason for all of this? Well, we've been talking about this big ridge of high pressure really even since last week, and it's really begun to take shape here over the last 24 hours. And I think it'll be its strongest yesterday and today. And that's why we did see temperatures in the low 70s, daytime highs in the valley. So it was absolutely just a gorgeous spring-like day. So this forecast model is known as the HRRR forecast model. It's been overly aggressive here, really even since last week on the fog developing in the valley. But you can see here, as we're seeing that fog develop in the Red Bluff area, you can see it's pretty accurate there. Now, as we go into the afternoon hours, as we expect that by the time we get in the late morning, early afternoon, most of that fog should begin to burn off and we'll see more sunshine. Now, you can see as we go into tomorrow morning, the potential for more fog developing, especially to the south, and then that burns off by midday, and then once again, maybe that potential as we go into Friday night and Saturday morning. Hey, by the way, if you're heading out to the Mount Shasta Ski Park, it is still open, but we're seeing that snow just dwindle more and more down to 34 inches at the top of Douglas. They're just calling it spring conditions. It tends to get very soft once we do get into those afternoon hours. But the roads are all clear, as you'd expect, with that limited amount of snow. All right, here's what we have for today. Temperatures. This is where it gets tricky, folks, because if the fog persists through a portion of the day, then you're talking temperatures mid to upper 50s for your daytime highs. But if it burns off quickly, you're talking mid to upper 60s, even some low 70s in the valley. So again, that's where it kind of gets tricky. Otherwise, in the mountains, of course, you're in that inversion layer. That's where you're seeing the warmer air. You're not seeing the fog. It's going to be warmer there as well. And for the coast, probably temperatures somewhere in the low to mid 60s. So for tonight, we're going to be looking at temperatures in the low to mid 40s in the valley. Still cold in the mountains, especially to the north and east. As you can see there in the teens and 20s. and off to the west along the coast and even the inland areas in the 30s and 40s for your overnight lows. Let's take a look at that 7-day forecast for the valley. Again, we'll just start out, we'll just call it AM or morning fog here for today. And that could be the case again, even for your Friday and Saturday. But you'll also notice we're beginning to see signs of change with those temperatures beginning to drop near the middle and latter part of next week. And it's not just for the valley, but I think everywhere is going to see that drop in the temperatures as that main ridge of high pressure I've been talking about begins to kind of break apart, and we'll see those cooler temperatures move in. So we've got Mountain Valley fog and that patchy Sacramento Valley fog as well. And that's what we're seeing here this morning. The high pressure is holding on strong for the next several days with above average highs through at least early next week. But that high pressure is beginning to show signs of breaking down by the middle and latter part of next week. And that's going to be those cooler temperatures I was talking about. So let's get into all of that in our deeper dive forecast sponsored by Shasta Hearing Aids.
Hearing isn't just about sound, it's about being part of every moment. This isn't your grandparents' hearing aid, it's a smart hearing aid for modern life. It's Bluetooth enabled, easy to control from your phone with your personal prescription, delivering the clarity you need. All that technology at half the cost of competitors, so you never miss a moment worth hearing. With our Here For You program, you get personal care and support every step of the way. This is what quality care sounds like.
Well, we've been talking about that potential for that radiation, or what's known in our area as the Thule fog, right? So we talked about it last time several weeks ago, but just kind of a refresher course of why we're seeing the fog and why we're going to see that fog here, most likely even for the next few days, and why we've already seen it for our neighbors down to the south. So the setup is this. Basically, we've had a lot of rain. Right? Remember in late December, even early this month, we saw a lot of rain. There's a lot of moisture at the surface. So what happens is with that high pressure beginning to take shape, you get what's called radiational cooling. You get daytime heating, that warmer air then escapes off into space and things begin to cool off. And what happens at that point, you've got the moisture at the surface from all that rain that we've seen here, drier air above that, and as that colder air really begins to, or that warmer air begins to move on out, we see that colder air get trapped within the valley, and you have what's known as a temperature inversion. So this is actually, it's not very common for us, but typically as you go higher in elevation, it gets cooler. That's just kind of the way it works. However, sometimes you get these inversions where it's cooler, that colder air gets trapped in the valley, and you have warmer air at above that, at say in the foothills and the higher elevations. And we saw a prime example of that yesterday where it was early in the morning in the low 30s in the valley, but in the foothills it was more like the mid to even upper 50s. So quite a big inversion there. And so that is really a good setup for that fog to develop. Now, fog is very finicky because there are all kinds of factors that we kind of have to look into. What are the winds doing? Are the winds going to blow up enough to really scour out that fog? Or are they going to be calm? If they're calm, that's where we really do start to see that fog really take shape and really kind of hold on. But also, how dense is the fog? Is it really dense or is it really thin? If you have a nice thin layer of fog, it doesn't take as much to burn it off. What's the angle of the sun? Several weeks ago, the angle of the sun was lower, so it's harder to penetrate that fog. However, the angle of the sun now is a little bit higher, so it may not be as difficult for that fog to burn off. So again, a lot of factors playing into account here, but I think for the most part, for areas that are seeing fog this morning in the valley, it will most likely burn off before or just shortly after the noon hour. And again, it's the setup. You have that stagnant air, and it's this ridge of high pressure right here. You can clearly see it. See the clouds moving up and over that ridge of high pressure. That is the stagnant air, and that's the setup we saw several weeks ago, right? We saw that rain, we saw before that, and then we saw all the moisture and that fog developing with that ridge of high pressure. So same setup that we saw several weeks ago, and this is eventually showing signs of breaking apart. So changes next week, I think it's a very good possibility. You can see here as we go through the weekend, the ridge of high pressure is still in place even into early next week. You see how we have that ridge right here, but we're beginning to see this ridge begin to get broken down by a storm system down off to our south and west and some colder air coming in. Now, I think for the most part, though, it's mainly just going to be a drop in our temperatures and not much in the way of rain. Typically, these storm systems that come from the north, they're fairly dry. They don't have a lot of moisture to work with. So this is looking at just kind of the moisture content. How much available moisture is there in the atmosphere? So we see these brown colors. That's an indication of drier air. But you can see there's a little bit of moisture going from dry to, barely within that a little bit of available moisture. So around Thursday, there is a slight chance, I think places maybe along the coast, maybe even off into Trinity County, a slight chance for a few light showers. But at this point, it's too far out for us to really iron out those details. So right now, I would not count on much in the way of rain, if any, as we go into the extended, at least through the end of next week. Let's talk about that potential for fog again here. As you can see here, there's that fog that we can see it burns off by midday today, and then we can see a repeat of that going into tonight and tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Once again, as we'd expect, the better chances are going to be to the south, even down into the San Joaquin Valley. Burns off by midday, and then of course we could see another repeat of that as we go into Friday night and Saturday morning. So we were talking about that potential for rain. What does the outlook look like coming in from the Climate Prediction Center? Well, at least we're out of the brown here, indicating that, we have a very good chance of seeing below normal rainfall, right? But we're in the kind of the in-between, right? Where you've got equal chances of seeing rain or above normal rainfall or below normal rainfall. So there's at least that little bit of hope that we're seeing that change in the overall pattern. But right now, ironing out those details as far as if it's going to rain, when it would rain, should that happen, and how much we'd end up with, that is, with that rainfall. But again, these are the signs of change that we're seeing here. You see the temperature trend. It's just slowly dropping. So that ridge of high pressure, not as strong. We're seeing the cooler air begin to move in, and we're getting back to closer to normal temperatures by the end of next week and into that next weekend. How about those lake levels? A lot of people, this is that time of the year when things dry out, people get concerned. Oh, we need the rain, we need the snow. Well, we look at different variables, right? How are we doing with the rainfall amounts? Well, we're over 100% in many cases for Northern California. The snowpack could be doing better, but it certainly has been worse. Lake levels, look at that. I mean, historical average, 130% or higher for the historical average, and the capacity looking very good. So we have very healthy amounts of water in our reservoirs. We're doing okay. So this is that guilt-free enjoying the drier and warmer weather. Now you can also see the wave heights. They are showing signs of dropping here. So obviously if you need to be on a small boat, if you're a fisherman, you just need to make sure you're going to be fine, right? Everything's going to be getting a lot better out there over the ocean. All right, take a look at those south winds at 5 to 10 knots. There you can see that patchy dense fog. There is a small corrected advisory this morning, but that will be lifted here later on this afternoon. As you saw, those wave heights are dropping over the next 24 hours. All right, so here is your neighborhood forecast, sponsored in part by Dignity Health. You've got those temperatures in the mid to upper 50s for your daytime highs. I put the AM fog in there, and we've been seeing that in Trinity County. A lot of those deep mountain valleys has been seeing that fog, but it burns off before noon. We take you to the north coast here, and we're going to see some of the fog along the coast as well. And many of the inland valleys are going to see that fog in the morning and burning off by noon as well. About 68 degrees for Gas Key, about Smith River about 70, and 56 degrees out in Hoopa. We take out to Siskiyou County. Now, again, this is where, it's kind of interesting because so many microclimates over Northern California, right? So you take a look at Scott Valley, Fort Jones, Etna. You've been seeing the fog every day, especially in the morning, and then it's been taking a while. Some days it burns off around, say, mid-afternoon, some days just before sunset. So I think that's going to be the case for you again here for today. But elsewhere, you're looking at sunny skies across the board in Siskiyou County, minus, of course, Fort Jones, Etna, and Scott Valley. Modoc County, mainly sunny skies, temperatures mainly in the 50s. We take you off to the eastern mountains. Not much in the way of fog there, but you are seeing those temperatures anywhere from 48 degrees in Westwood to upwards of 66 degrees in Paradise in the foothills there. We take you out to the valley where temperatures are going to be the low to even some mid-60s. Now, this is, again, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, it depends on what the fog decides to do. If it persists a little bit longer than expected, it's not going to get to 65 degrees in Chico. It would be more like 58 or 59, maybe even a little bit lower than that. So taking a look at that 7-day forecast, for the most part, again, the main thing that we're watching here is that these temperatures in the overall pattern here is they're dropping, and that's just a sign that that ridge of high pressure is starting to break down. So again, we look at the temperatures for the valley, right? 70 in Redding. Yesterday got up to 72 in Redding, right? But if that fog persists a little bit longer, it's going to be more like probably somewhere in the mid to upper 60s. Now, above that fog, places like Lakehead and even Whiskeytown, yeah, you could see those low 70s for your daytime highs as part of that temperature inversion, right? The temperatures increase with height. So looking at your 7-day forecast for Redding, you see how the temperatures, again, they're slowly dropping back down to the low 60s by Tuesday and Wednesday. That's your morning update. I'll be back again at noon with the latest forecast. Have a great morning.
When you see flashing lights, someone's life depends on us.
And while we're out helping crash victims, we need your help to keep us safe. Move over, slow down, it's the law, it protects everyone.
Our crews are out here every day, keeping the roads safe for you and your family.
We're often the last ones on scene, and we want to make it home safe too.
Protect those who protect you, slow down and move over.